I am going to present a series of charts of the S&P 1500 that will help us gauge when we are in a bull market. And for those who are unfamiliar with what the S&P 1500 consists of, first off is the S&P 500, the S&P Mid-Cap 400, and the S&P Small Cap 600. Added together is the S&P 1500. And I will give credit to Arthur Hill over at Stock Charts for these series of charts that I will show you. He showed them to me some years back. And this rule here for the S&P 1500 high-low percentage is Arthur's rule, and the rest of the series will be my rules. So the S&P 1500 high-low percent must have at least one or two indexes above 10% to make a bull market. So in the present day right here, we don't even have to look at the other charts, so this is the one I start with. One or two of these, preferably two, should be above 10% to make a bull market, and start looking at the other charts to confirm. So since that is not the case, we'll look back to early beginning of September here in 2020, where the S&P 500 went above 10%, but none of the others, mid-cap and small-cap, were still below 10%. So we'll move on to the stocks above their 20 simple moving average in the S&P 500 to see that it was only the S&P 500 that was above plus 80, and it takes at least two indexes to call the bull market. So you can see that was the only one above positive 80 in September, so we stopped there. And here's an S&P 500 daily cloud chart, and you can see in September it made a peak here and then fell off of the face of the earth going into October. So it was a good thing that we didn't get involved then. And we can go back a little further in that COVID crash era to July 23rd, I believe, yes, where the S&P 500 was barely above the 10% line for the high-low percent, and the rest of the indexes were underneath it, mid-cap and small-cap. So then we move on to the instruments in all the indexes above their 20 simple moving average, large cap, mid cap, and small cap for July 23rd. You can see it right there, 22nd or 23rd, and the mid cap was barely above its 80 line to call a bull market, right there, technically above it, and the small cap was underneath it. So then we'll move on to the 50, and here's the 50 simple moving average, where we must have two indexes above the 80 line to call a bull market. So on July 23rd, the S&P 500 was above the 80 line, but the other two were below it, so we stopped there. No bull market. Now we'll take a look at the October 8th through 12th, 2020 era here, and you can see the S&P 500 above its 10% line, but the other ones aren't. So we'll move on to the 20. And the stocks above their 20 simple moving average in the S&P 500 for October 12th, S&P 500 was above plus 80, mid cap and small cap above their 80 line. So then we move on to the 50 simple moving average and see that the S&P 500 was above its plus 80 line there in green, and the mid cap was above its 80 line in green for both the 8th and the 12th. So we keep moving on to the 200. And the stocks above their 200 simple moving average in the S&P 1500 for October 8th, 12th period here shows the S&P 500 above its 60 line there, and the mid-cap 400 above its 60% line in green there, but not the S&P 600 small cap. And in the S&P 500 daily cloud chart, we'll look at October 8th through the 12th. So if we would have gotten in on the 8th, it would have moved up a little bit more, but then had a precipitous drop going into the end of October. And I'll tell you, that flushed out a lot of investors and traders that got into it on the bull signal. So you can see the precipitous drop into the end of October. But knowing that we are in a bull market by the indicators I just showed you, we stayed in. And I'm sure if I looked into Mark and other indicators, we might have started buying a little bit down here. So we had 2 buys, I believe, at that time. So then on November 9th or 10th, you can see that the S&P 500 high-low percent was well above 10, along with the mid-cap and the small cap here. So we'll move on to the 20. And you can see here on the November 10th, all 3 indexes were above their 20 simple moving average. So we move on to the 50. And on November 10th, you can see the indexes above their 50 simple moving average were hitting on all cylinders, all 3 above the 50. We'll move on to the 200. And we can see the indexes above their 200 simple moving average on November 10th, 2020. All 3 of them were above the 60% line. So the bull market continues, and as you can see, the rest was history for quite a long time.